Super pleased to be joined by Steve Bancroft. The name of his book is Eden 2.1, and I'm going to let him tell you about it, but I love the summary of the essence of this book, which is that it is a modern day flip, if you will, inspired by Mary Shelley's very, very famous book that we know, Frankenstein, also known as the modern Prometheus. So it is about the questions of humans to understand the source of life, and then much more beyond that. And it's the questions that do rattle around, I find, in everyone's head, at least the paths that I've crossed. And certainly for Steve, he knows all about this. He's the retired dean of the Cathedral Church of St. Paul in Detroit, in the Episcopal Diocese of Michigan. So he certainly has observed science, technology, and all of this, and the ramifications of what it means religiously and ethically. So Steve, I hope that was a good setup. I think that is the essence of the book. What made you write this?
Well, some years ago, I was invited and accepted to be on the ethics committee, medical ethics committee for a large training hospital. In other words, they train doctors. And it was fascinating, to be honest with you. I was on it for several years. And I suppose the major issues we dealt with had to do with new technology and how to implement technology. And some of it was pretty esoteric, to be quite honest with you. And we were asked, well, how do we do this? I mean, what's the ethical and moral ramifications around some of these activities? And it wasn't easy. I'll be very honest with you. It was not an easy process to come to some conclusions and help the hospital and the medical centers and training facilities, the medical training facilities. But it really hit me very hard during that time that we are getting into areas in which we are more technically capable than we are morally capable. And there was a real fear among all of us on that committee, which was made up of theologians like myself, but also psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, administrators of hospitals, administrators of medical schools. So it was, and all of us agreed it was tough. So I just kept thinking about it, and the more I had never read Mary Shelley's book. I, of course, seen the various movies, heard stories, but decided maybe there's something there. So I read her book and I was shocked, quite honestly, because the movies don't portray, except there's one that portrays the book more faithfully than the others, but the famous movies don't at all. And then I read more about it, was surprised about the background that Mary had that prompted her to write the book. And I said, the questions she raised are the questions that, that was 1818. The questions she raised are even more important, even more prescient in today's world than they were in her time. And so I said, I wonder if I can do something without stepping on her toes, so to speak. And I didn't want to do her book again, but I wanted to do something that was inspired and more modern.
So in doing the book, because it was great, what you just said, your take on reading Mary Shelley's book and realizing, and as you said, the 1800s, the early 1800s, and the people that were in the room, and the things that you've seen in discussing technology and these scientifically where we're headed. What do you talk about specifically in Eden 2.1?
Well, Mary had three questions, I think. She never explained the book outside of just letting it sit there. One, she had just lost a child. and it was very devastating to her. Secondly, she had seen a very interesting parlor trick. And the parlor trick was to take a battery, the concept of batteries to produce electricity was a brand new concept. Not many people had seen it. But she went to a display where they had a dead frog tied to a thing, and they touched the battery wires to the frog, and the frog started dancing, which gave the impression, of course, that the frog had been reanimated. And it had a very heavy impact on her, particularly in regard to just having lost a child. And then her sister was involved with a relationship that had lack of love, I guess is the way to agree it, and it hurt her sister very badly. And so when you put the three of them together, those were the themes of her book. And the question, of course, was raised by people smarter than me, was if Frankenstein had not disliked his creature, so to speak, the monster that he had created, would the monster have not been bad? Would he have not been angry and done the bad things that he did if he had been loved rather than hated? And I wanted to reverse that process, that question. So the main characters in the book are normal people, but they also are, I hope, attractive people. I think that they come out, my intention was anyway, that the reader would find these people both realistic, but at the same time, people that they could equate with. And that the book would end in high question is, also for us to ask the questions about ourselves and the circumstances that we face on a daily basis.
Yeah, and it's so interesting listening to you kind of bring that around, and wow, just thinking about it, that how often are we now questioning this in a sense because of AI? Because now we're even taking it to another level.
Yep, exactly. And I don't know what people think personally about things like designer babies through DNA manipulation and gene. I mean, we're also looking at trans issues right now on the basis of whether or not genetic makeup is set at birth, or is there some kind of transitional process on a continuum? Those kind of things are all big issues today.
Yeah, no kidding. And you've said it, but really when someone reads this, what do you ultimately hope they take away?
Well, I think the ultimate desire on my part is to raise the caution. Okay, that was what Mary Shelley was trying to do. She called it horror, which is a very different term in her day than it is today. When we think of horror, we think of horror movies that they try to scare you. That's not what she was thinking. What she was thinking, and was a Gothic horror, what she meant, this is a horrendous consideration. This is a horrendous possibility, is what she meant. And I share that. I share that in terms of occasionally humans have now outstripped our technicality, our technical ability has outstripped, in my opinion, some of our wisdom, some of the ability to know what to do with it or how to manage it. And that it has the ability, as people talk about in AI, of actually getting past us and into a circumstance where we would find ourselves in conflict with it. Certainly in our day and time, we're in conflict among ourselves about how to use or not use, or to see various things. So what I guess I wanted at the end of this was to raise some real caution within the framework of people's thinking about just because we're able to do it, should we do it? And that was actually the end product of what Mary Shelley was trying to do in the 1800s. And it hasn't changed. I think our situation is even more dramatic than hers, simply because we can do it. Should we do it?
Yeah, it's a perfect place to end this. Should we do it? And it's so, again, the essence of this book, this story, which is a novel, as you said,
yes,
and using different characters, a whole different flip on Shelley's book, but taking that theme. So fascinating. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble for a song. If you're a Kindle reader, you get it that way, paperback. Steve Bancroft's book is Eden 2.1. Thanks for coming on, Steve.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Kate. It was a delight to be with you.